order and go through and introduce all the committee members. As I say your name, please say a quick hello. Jefferson Ellis.
Good morning.
Megan Rogers.
Good morning.
Ricardo Sejo.
Hello.
Eva Michelle.
Hi.
Robin.
Hello.
Billy.
Hi.
Hayden.
Hello.
Sorry, Stu.
Hi.
I don't know why I did last names on this side and then skipped them. I'm very sorry. That was, yeah, even Michelle Spicer, I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I just now realized I did that. Y'all are special.
But we knew that.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that. At this time, we'll go through and vote on the approval of our minutes. You all have a link to the draft action minutes from our January 26, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those action minutes?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. We did not receive any public comment ahead of time, to the best of my knowledge.
Correct.
Correct. Are there any members of the public that would like to address any of the listed items? Wonderful. At this time, we'll go through and look at, so we've got a couple things we're going to do for our new business. We have a letter for recognition for Bob Carr. We're going to talk about the street sidewalk closure policies, and then we'll go through our updates and reports and talk about future agenda items. So we don't have a very heavy schedule today. Yay. So with that, Eva Michelle.
So Bob Carr passed away 3 weeks ago. He was the founding chair of the Downtown Commission, and so I had offered to write a letter to his family on behalf of all of us with condolences. So I will just read that to y'all. Dear Ellen and the entire Carr family, it is with heavy hearts that we extend our deepest condolences to you and your family on the passing of Bob, the founding chair of the Asheville Downtown Commission. We were deeply saddened to hear about his passing and want to express our sympathies during this difficult time. Bob was an exceptional leader and visionary who played a pivotal role in shaping the downtown area of Asheville that we know and love. His dedication and passion for the community were evident in his tireless efforts to enhance and revitalize the downtown district and make it a vibrant and welcoming place for residents and visitors alike. His legacy will continue to inspire us all as we work to uphold the values and principles he championed. We are grateful for Bob's invaluable contributions to the Asheville Downtown Commission and the lasting impact he has made on our city. His leadership, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to the betterment of our community will be deeply missed. Please know that our thoughts are with you during this time of mourning. If there is anything we can do to support you and your family, please do not hesitate to reach out. Bob's memory will forever remain in our hearts, and his legacy will continue to shape the future of downtown Asheville. With heartfelt sympathy, Eva Michelle Spicer on behalf of the Asheville Downtown Commission.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah. Do we, if we want to, she's offering that on behalf of the Downtown Commission, so I would like to take a vote, if that's okay. So that's presented as a motion from Eva Michelle. Is there a second?
A second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Dana, are you printing that on city letterhead?
I can.
Okay.
I can do that before you leave, right? And then you guys can sign it? Okay.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Well, our next item of business is we had a request from the public to look at basically city policies related to street and sidewalk closure and how that affects local businesses when those closures occur. Basically, please don't do that right in our heaviest shopping times and things like that. How that works, and often that's not only done by the city. I mean, there are big projects that are done by the city. Some of our infrastructure projects that would affect local business owners, but this also relates to how city policies affect private developers and their work and those sidewalk and road closures, when those happen and how they communicate. So we wanted to bring that up and address it. So I think Chris Carnes is going to talk about that, right? So you're up.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Chris Cairns.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I appreciate your saying that. I am the city traffic engineer, have been here about 2.5 years, been doing this type of work for much longer. Thank you. So I will give you a traffic / transportation side of this. Pardon me for a second. Basically, sorry for that delay. I'll give you an overview of actually, let me just set it up here. What our authority is, what our general process is, and the things that we try to balance on the transportation side, and then the importance of communication throughout the whole process. You know, this has to do with development work, city work, anybody, utility work. We're involved with all of the closures on all of the approved closures on city streets. So our authority is in the general statutes, where we have the authority to control the city streets within our city limits. We have some authority on state roads, but generally we defer to the state on that, except for the sidewalks, because we maintain those sidewalks.
Very
Yeah.
briefly, could you give an example of the major thoroughfares in downtown that are NCDOT?
Charlotte Street is one, Biltmore Avenue, Broadway Street, Merriman, Patton west of Clingman
Right.
is theirs, and Clingman Avenue.
Okay,
in
thank you.
downtown. South Side,
Ashland?
that's city,
Okay,
until it reaches South Side.
gotcha.
And South Side is a state road as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. You know, good, I appreciate that, because, yeah, there's state roads kind of embedded here and there.
And so, again, we can.
Yeah, no,
apologize
feel
for
free to
interrupting.
keep,
Yeah,
it helps steer me.
So the city, if NCDOT wants to close one of our roads that are theirs, do they coordinate with you, or do they just do it?
They generally just do it, but there's a, when they will divert to a city street, they definitely coordinate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we communicate regularly, both through transportation and through our public works office with DOT offices.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and basically, our authority, we try to keep all the city's streets, sidewalks, and all other facilities free and clear, except when work needs to be done, and then we do have the authority to allow closures or to actually enact closures. And I do want to step back and say I'm talking about non-event closures. Event closures are handled through our event folks. John Philman is the one who coordinates those, but he does coordinate directly with us because we are the ones who also review that part of the event closures. So this is just telling us that we have the right to regulate, and the way we regulate is through permitting. We do not actually have a policy, we just have an authority, and basically the policy right now is embedded in our application form. We have a one-page application form right now. We're in the process of automating that to be entirely online. So it's got more details and puts more onus on the developer to make sure that he has everything covered as far as providing a traffic control plan, communicating with affected residents, businesses, property owners.
So this is not something that has been happening, this is something that will.
Oh, no, it does happen. Yeah, no, the permitting process has been around for a very long time. I'm just saying that there's no formal policy that I'm aware of. It's just the general statute authority.
It's just embedded within the application process
Correct,
itself.
yes.
Thank you. So
You're
it's not
talk-
a written policy so much as if you go through the form, it will require these things of you.
That's correct. And we do have an ultimate, just so y'all are aware, we have an ultimate goal of creating a policy that hopefully will give us more enforceability, capabilities, things like that, because a lot of closures happen without our knowing about it. So we rely heavily on people letting us know that something is happening, and then we go out and say, hey, can you move your dumpster or whatever it is out in the street? So, I mean, it's a nonstop issue. We hear issues almost every day. We have one person who does these permits. He he works with me on any unusual things, but he's very good at his job, communicates well. He gets a lot done because he communicates so regularly with developers and contractors. So this list I gave is just generally what's on our application now, because it is required that we don't ask them to provide documentation, but we do require that they do outreach to people who are going to be affected.
I know you probably don't have the data for this, and so if you can't answer, that's fine. Do you have any idea as to rough percentages of the road and sidewalk closures requested by private developers versus, say, utility or road work? You know, in other words, the difference between public work and that goes on by private developers. My instinct would be that the bill of events would be much higher on the development side.
That's a good question. I mean, we do permits citywide, so, and roughly 300 permits per year just through our office. That's the non-event ones. We do not require permits for city projects, but we do coordinate. I mean, that may be something that we change in the future. I don't know, but that would be when we develop a policy. We'll have to work through that. But yeah, what we deal with, Duke Energy and AT&T, and when they're doing overhead work, they are pretty good about getting permits. So they're pretty steady stream, but I would say they're way less than half. We did update fees recently to help cover our time and efforts that it takes to go out in the field and try to control folks. And right now our control is, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Here's our authority, move this. I mean, we can push it in some ways depending on what the situation is. We get the fire marshal involved at times when a street is blocked, because that's one of our key things. And that's what I want to talk about. What we try to balance on the transportation side, we know the work has to be done. We do talk about, does this really require closing a road? Does this require closing a sidewalk? And that's not the best example right there in the picture, but that's one where we've kept sidewalk or the pedestrian way open for quite a while now on Biltmore, just by providing the overhead protection. And that is something that we can require when there's overhead work. If it's going to be very short term, we don't. Like if there's going to be window washing, we may just allow a sidewalk closure and detour the pedestrians. But those are the types of things we look at. Our number one thing is to protect the public and to protect the people working. We rely on whoever's asking for this permit to come up with a plan. Our gentleman who does these permits helps a lot with that, but we really need him to spend more time doing other things, actually overseeing it instead of preparing plans for folks. So that's something that we're going to be doing, because it's important to have, when somebody's driving or riding a bike, walking, when they come upon a traffic plan, they know what to do. It's clear. That's part of what we do, is just make sure that it's following the same thing. If you see it in Ohio or Florida, wherever, it's going to look very similar. You know how to react quickly and safely. So when we look at these closure permit applications, we may have to have some discussions, like how long is this going to take? When are you going to do it? What time of day is you talking? You know, we got noise ordinance, we got need for businesses to have access, to get deliveries, and of course, fire access, emergency access is one of the most important parts. Anytime a full closure is requested, transportation cannot fully approve that. That has to go through the fire marshal as well. And I've seen good examples and bad examples on communications. One of the ones that I'm thinking of is Flatiron. I probably shouldn't bring that up specifically, but they have done some things that are probably not desirable from a business perspective, but the contractor has been very good at communicating. I will say that. And he tries to work through things, not always what we want, but I've seen them do some things to be flexible, like doing concrete that dries super fast so it can open up the same day kind of stuff, which is a very expensive thing. But I just wanted to say that our main thing from the transportation side is trying to balance all these things. We try to keep a broad view of what's important, what the factors are, but also try to be consistent citywide on what we allow and when we allow.
I have a question
Sure.
about fees. So when you pay a fee for the permit, not the permit fee, but the fee based on time,
Mhm.
is it just for the life of that permit, or is it based on the amount of space they're actually closing down? Like, so you can close 4
Yeah.
blocks and it's only $50, or you can close half a block and it's $50?
It is not based on area, but that's a good question. We would do our best to try to not do what you're describing. I mean, I haven't seen that happen yet, but that could happen. I mean, like our city project on Patton Avenue has been pretty significant closure, but I can't remember any on the private side that's been that substantial.
Well, Flatiron would be, you close an entire street.
It's a
Right.
block, yeah, and then they wanted to close Wall Street. I think they had to.
They have done it a couple times.
Several times.
So that's
Yeah.
just $100 a week for them for that whole amount of space? Or maybe they didn't even have to pay that because that wasn't in the.
No, they would have paid in some way, shape, or form, yeah.
It was based on the amount of time, so if it's like, if it's less than a week, they could close Wall Street for, your point is that there's no difference in closing Wall Street for 3 days and closing 10 feet of sidewalk for 3 days,
And then
currently.
my
Right.
other question relates to the parking meters. So are they having to pay to bag those meters in addition?
That's correct, yeah. I left that out of the list of things, but that is one that's right in the form. It's like coordinate with parking services. It's this much per parking meter per day, and it's a higher cost for accessible parking spaces, things like that. Yeah, that's, you got me thinking. Just ways that we could better do that in the future. I mean, I will tell you that on the Wall Street, our conversation was, we don't want to close this, we don't want to close this. And there were just some things that they, thank you. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. I'm gonna be here for more conversation, but I'll just stop here and say, if there are issues, we want to know about it, especially safety issues, but if there's challenges that we miss, the developer, or not developer, the applicant, whoever closed the roads miss, we want to try to work through issues. I mean, the work has to get done, whether it needs a closure or not, that's a big part of the discussion. You know, it takes all forms, major work, minor work, even just, you know, fixing grout on old buildings overhead. That requires closures, all that kind of stuff. And we try our best to balance things. And one of my goals, and I think Mark may touch on this as well, better communication, require a communication plan for larger projects, so we don't just say, hey, make sure you talk to people, and not have any accountability for that.
Can I ask about accountability? So like, let's say you're saying a lot of times you find out that someone has closed the street without permission. What are the repercussions for that? Is there a bill? Like, how are we enforcing these?
No, that was part of what I was talking about. Right now, my group has zero enforcement capabilities. We can be polite and say, can you get your stuff out of here? I mean, a lot of the contractors and stuff want to work with us because they know at some point they're gonna have to pay a fee, and they want us to be able to handle their stuff correctly. So, I mean, there's some give and take there, but if it's a bad enough thing, we'll get the police involved. But it's really more of a, we can also work through our development services, who's gonna speak next, on if it's a permitted work, can some action be done through that permit to stop the work, or encourage them through that avenue to better coordinate and, you know, on the transportation impacts.
And I know you said you guys are working on a policy that would give you more enforcement. In that work, can we consider or look into, like, if there's temporary, something we can do where if someone is going against the permit or not applying, there's at least a fine. Like, you guys have the capability of charging them because they pay the permit fee. So if someone does something, can we charge them because they have not applied or they've broken the permit? It's a lot more than $100.
That's a fair
If we arrest them,
question.
Can we charge them a bill?
They go 8 days instead of 7.
Right, or if you find out that somebody has shut down the street without permission, can you give them a bill? You know, like, hey, I can't arrest you, but I can send, I know you're a contractor, I'm gonna send you a fine for $2,500, the same thing you do when you go on your parking.
I'm not against that idea.
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
temporary, like, since we get, I know policies take time, but I mean, like, in the next month, can I make a request?
I don't cover staff time, isn't it? I mean, isn't council going through fees and charges budgeting now?
So staff got fees and charges recommendations in probably like 6 months ago or so. It's helpful to have this conversation and hear your ideas and recommendations to give, both of the right departments in the room, like, more of a reason to try to look at prioritizing that. It wouldn't be in the next month, but it could be something considered. I mean, the recent fee changes, it's not based on space, but it is based on time. We didn't even have that a couple of years ago. And so incremental progress can and does happen, and with you all making these recommendations, it's helpful. And I don't know if these folks are able to commit to a timeline, but it's a great and important conversation.
So the original question too came in because it's not just that, that the extent has the same right now. So, there's no difference in shutting down Wall Street for 3 days versus, half of a sidewalk, off of Lexington in 3 days. It's not just that, it's also not based on like times. And so we all know that like our retailers, one of the comments was like they really wanted to shut down Wall Street like, the week before Christmas for 2 days. And they were like, we can't, you're gonna kill us, versus shutting down Wall Street for 2 days in the middle of, say, March. It's a different, and so I don't know how to do this. I'm not that smart, but it seems like there would be a way to communicate with the adjacent folks, and like there'd be some kind of way to like, okay, I know you've got a schedule and I know you've got to do stuff, but you're gonna have to do this at night, or you're gonna have to, come up with some other option because we cannot let you do this. We have blackout periods where you can't do that for these folks. At that time, you're gonna kill our small businesses.
Well, yeah, and also from a community standpoint, as my office is on a block that's getting a lot of construction right now, they shut off water for a week. They didn't tell us. And so, like, I had a client in the bathroom and the water went off.
Wow.
And I'm next to a coffee shop. And I think part of the reason the communities bring this up and this sort of this, witchy-poo finger is that it feels like people can just get away with it because it's not your fault. You can't enforce it. And so, like, I can't send the rich people a bill after they, upset an entire community. Like, or why didn't you communicate? Why isn't there a fine for not communicating? You know what I mean? And so I think finding a way in the interim of, again, not y'all's fault, but finding a way in a 2-year period of defining a new policy to make it for the community to know that we're trying to hold people to account, even if it is just in their pockets, because that's how they get away with everything is in their pockets.
So for the city to have a policy on this, is that something that you can do within development services, or is that something that council needs to weigh in on?
I believe to be a policy, an actual policy, it has to go through council. I've not done that,
So DSD would come up, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm talking to
No,
Mark
that's
like
good.
You're not here. So DSD would then come up with the policy, and then,
Well, that's more of a transportation policy, the street closure part. So
but is it? I mean,
it is because, it used to be public works, but transportation is now
okay.
on its own.
So transportation would come up with the policy.
Correct, and we would
Staff
work with,
come up and then work with all the stakeholders involved, because this is not just a downtown issue. And then it would go to council, and we could weigh in on it.
right.
And we gotta remember the overlying part of this is having the authority to charge that fee or a punitive fine, right? And so that basically is a legal entity, right? And so they have to, our legal department has to basically evaluate that as to what it is. And then, in order to have that authority to do that, once we have the legal right to do it, then council actually has to approve that so it can actually go into the body of our regulatory requirements, right? So our ordinances, basically. And so there is while we can come up with ideas, and we are working on that, and I'll touch on that here in a second, but just all great questions, but we also, there's another layer above that has that approval and that authority piece.
So, yeah, Mark Matheny, Development Services Director.
Yep,
for
sorry.
young people.
I'll turn it over to Mark. I'll sit right here.
Okay, sorry, we're jumping ahead of everything, sorry. I said it was gonna be a light meeting.
Good morning. I'm Mark Matheny, Director of Development Services. Happy Friday. Great to have you here, and I appreciate you guys giving us some time to kind of talk through this. We, in a very quick kind of brainstorm session that just kind of pulled some things up. You see the bullet points here. I can read them, or you can kind of see them if that's fine. We wanted to just touch on a couple of things. And we talk about how do we inform, how do we continue to keep the process in front, right? And so if we have an 18-month or a 24-month project, that the interesting thing, if you look at it, and some of you know development and some are not as familiar as others, but the team that comes to council to get that project approved is not really that team that's on the ground, right, breaking up concrete and putting metal frames up, right? And so, and once that team that is there doing the construction starts, that team itself is going to evolve, right? They're going to get different project managers, they're going to get different superintendents. And so as much as we train somebody from day one, in day 91, we kind of have to go back, right? And reestablish that. And we experience that all the time in a million different scenarios. But that is an important thing for all of us to remember while we're thinking about what the next phase, what the next step in this looks like and information sharing looks like. That's really something that we are considering how to do that. And in my old school mind, right, I think of a 5x7 card, right? And we're just gonna say, here's downtown construction best practices, and here's, who all your neighbors might be, and here's how you should communicate to your project managers and superintendents when you do your Tuesday morning subcontractor meeting, right? And, but that's the old school, and there's nothing wrong with that, and maybe that is part of it, right? I think this is a multifaceted piece, it has to be, but I think there's a technology way of doing that too, and that is not my realm. But we have a lot of great people that do know how we can do that, and as we improve, and I'm gonna get into a big improvement here in a second, as we find those levels of improvement, there's potential that maybe there's a periodic reminder that comes out, right? Maybe we know who the principal contractor is, the general contractor may or may not be on, but if we can get who their project managers are, we can kind of send a little bit of a reminder, just, hey, would you bring this up in your Tuesday morning, safety meeting, or whatever kind of meetings they have. Contractors, they have that as a regular basis. And so I think that technology part of that is available. It's one thing that we kind of lose track of on technology is, well, if we just, push the button and it goes, then it's all done, right? And in my world, that never happens, right? You push the button, it goes, and then you call them up and you say, did you get that? And they say, yes, we got that. And then we go and shake their hand and say, you got that. What does it mean to you, right? And so there's a continuous evolvement, and I think that has to be part of it always, right? We have to continue that, and we want to work together to figure out what that looks like and how we can actually manage that, because there's, this is one of all the other projects that everybody's doing. So that's kind of that. You see on there a hang tag thing. This is something that we did old school. Fire department during their periodic inspections were running into some issues where they weren't permitted. So we came up with a very simple concept, boom, here's a hang tag. Here, call the development services department, get a permit, right? Because you're in here and you shouldn't be, right? You don't have the legal authority yet to be here because you haven't been permitted. And so, and we gave them a little description of what to do and who to call and that kind of thing. I think there's a reality of that also, and I say that not necessarily from the staff point of view, but maybe that's what the contractor can do, right? If they know, and if you look at the last the last hollow bullet point, we talked about a GIS tool. You know, we're close to that kind of technology where we can get that information or give that information to the contractor. They can find out who all of their radius businesses and residents are, right? And so maybe, you know, we in our best practices 5x7 card, we tell them, you know, do a hang tag or find everybody's email address and send them a reoccurring email. Say, hey, you know, it's water shut off time, you know, on this day, and it's going to be 7 days. Does that affect anybody? Right? That'd be a great question, right? And how does that work? And so we want to be able to try to implement all those kind of pieces. And one thing that's going to help us on this, the very last bullet point talks about future software updates. Well, we've been working probably 9 months now on a new development services software. We've been working off of something called Acela for too long. And you know, the interesting thing, it's been about 11 years now. And just because we've done different things to it, we've had different needs, we've kind of Frankensteined it into things that just barely work for us. And we've realized that it's gone on too long, right? And so now what we've done, we've reached out, we did a whole process on evaluating a lot of other services that do that. The new project that we have is called Clarity. It's a very agile product. It's on a Salesforce platform, and so it's all cloud-based, which helps, you know, our IT department and our department and that sort of thing, as far as that the back of the house kind of stuff. But the nice thing about this is that it allows for a lot more transparency as to what's happening, right? Contractors can have a list of what their projects are. They can see that. Designers can have a list of what their projects are, and they can see that. And you basically, from the outside, you're going to see the same thing. And those are the ones that are relative to construction and development. The good news also is this is helpful for the general public, right? Anybody, a business owner, a resident, anybody can get on here and see it a lot more than right now. You kind of, you know, click into it and you hope that you get the right address or the right permit number. It's going to actually show you a lot more. It's going to tie in a lot closer. You know, if anybody uses Simplicity and you can kind of see that development portal piece, it's going to have a similar feel to that, where it's a lot more available. And the other thing with that, the advantage of having that software, not only just the transparent part of it, but we're also at the same time developing really a hub and satellite concept, where we're already working with all the other departments that have something to do with development, including MSD and our water department, transportation, everybody who has something. But this allows us to take that a little bit extra step. And what we want to do, because it is a newer technology, we can actually help some of the application parts, right? Is where you know, Public Works might have an application where it only goes to them. And you know, Christopher was just talking about an application that goes to them. What we're trying to do is take the relief off of some of that staff, so that if it's an application, if it gets a review, and if you pay a fee, it really comes to the hub, right? And that will come to one central spot, and it's all electronic, and then we will send that out so the reviewers can do reviewers, and they can do comments. The technical experts can talk to the applicants in their own terminology and in their own world, but everything concentrates through here. So there's a great deal of administrative effort that is going to be relieved by doing this. And we're going out to all the different pods and finding out how we can actually integrate that. And so that's going to be a big help as far as that goes. But at the same time, you know, I point to you because we're having this conversation, but it works the same with anybody else, is any of our other satellite departments, is that those permits are also available. Those permits are also transparent. Those permits are also part of that massive system. And so we can see the sub-pieces of a larger project always there. And I've been rambling on. Hopefully most of that makes sense, and I'm glad to kind of talk through any questions that are up here or any further.
So when you say future software, so the Clarity will support enforcement process how? How will it support enforcement?
Yeah, and so, I mean, what we have to, well, there's a couple of pieces of enforcement, right? Enforcement of what we're talking, we have a compliance division. They're actually going to be the first ones to take that on, right? And that's our animal services, zoning enforcement, and that sort of thing. Noise, which will be relative to this. And what that does is that actually allows, while it doesn't have the actual fines or anything on there, if a policy comes up that can relate to that, right? So we can actually see where that happens, because it's part of a bigger project, right? All the projects and all the sub-permits are gathered within one. And so when there is a violation of some sort, we know whether it's our department, the Development Services Inspection Team, or Plan Review, or Fire Department, or Transportation comes out there and says, hey, this is what you told us. This is what you told us you were going to do, and I'm looking at it, it doesn't look like anything like that. Well, we can know that. It's easier basically for the outside to see that, right? If somebody has a complaint, they can get on there and say, hey, I'm looking at this, and this is what they identified they were going to do. But it also helps us internally within our own departments to be able to have a better communication, because it's a lot more transparent what permits are actually out there.
I'm sorry.
Well, like, yes, and then you have that clarity, and you know exactly how they messed up. How do we punish them? And how do we make it, you know, equitable to, or proportional to the influence and the harm they've caused?
Probably a council question, yeah.
And that is,
Well, I'm saying it feels like if it's a council question on that end, it should be a council question from the beginning, which is, what is the point of getting clarity on how people are breaking the rules if you're not getting clarity on what the punishment is for breaking that rule?
What's the standard?
Right, like, I feel like that should be all together, so the same group of people, because you're the ones that are gonna report it to whoever the enforcement body will be.
right.
And so it just, is that a separate conversation? Like, is that a part of the work y'all are doing, is figuring out what the punishment should be?
To be frank, no, that's not a primary piece. I think it is a good conversation, and just so kind of everybody has a feel for this, in general, that's not really a priority. I mean, it is, right? If somebody's doing something wrong, we definitely want to find them, and if we have that, and we have that within our legislation, we have that within our ordinances, right? If you're doing this wrong, then you know, then there is a fine, or there's a, you know, whether it's a misdemeanor or something like that. So there are ways to do that. As far as the what we're doing, developing on this part of it, not digging that deeply into it. And as a general rule, we're not, as a community, we're not forward that way, right? And I know there are communities that are, you know, you've done this. I mean, I worked for a place many years ago. If you started work without a permit, it was a 3-time permit fee, right? So you got 3 times the amount of what that permit would be as a fine, as a punitive piece, and a punishment. And we don't really have that within what we're doing now. It's not, I'm not saying that's, but that is a much bigger conversation, yes.
See, my experience, City of Asheville is much more about, we're looking for compliance, not punishment. So they're always trying to get, no, we're not trying to hit you so much. It's more like we want you to comply.
Right, and I think that's from a community
That's right.
standpoint, that's the thing. It feels, in a city that has such wide wealth gaps and so much disenfranchisement, it feels like people who can afford to, or have relationships with the right people, can just get smacked on the hand and they keep working. And even if they mess up one permit, they'll still get approved for the next permit. And that's not how the rest of the city works. And so it feels like finding a way to explain that better and bring more people into that process, or make it so the people, these big contractors are dealing with the same reality that everyone else is dealing with, feels relevant.
Well, a quick question. What, do we have any closures of sidewalks or roads that would affect our access to of the public and the workers to their businesses? And I want to talk about access too, because access is not just physical access. You can't see their signs in a lot of these cases, and that's a whole different thing. But is any of it happen and it's non-permitted work? Like, in other words,
Carter Street stormwater.
well, so, okay, yeah, so if it's city work, if it's city work, it's not really permitted per se.
Is it permitted, city work?
For a closure, I don't believe so.
In other words, are there closures that happen that the city doesn't have a permit relationship with some entity? You know what I'm asking? In other words, nobody's closing the sidewalk or coming to ask to close a sidewalk that there's not some kind of entity involved that has some other permit associated with it, whether it's Duke, AT&T,
Well,
you know,
let
XYZ,
me try to answer.
XYZ Hotel.
I'll start to answer it, and then I'll see what I missed. But for the city work, the public work that we're doing, if it's a construction project, they follow the exact same process as what we do for a permit. They just don't have that actual form and pay that fee or anything. So they communicate to all, because there's usually internal review through the fire, anybody who might be affected, and there's supposed to be a communication plan as well, so.
Yeah, okay. Well, because what I'm trying to get to, Jefferson, is that if there is a relationship between the city and the entity that's doing whatever they're doing, and the city is holding a permit or some kind of approval or some kind of closeout, then the city has the carrot that they want.
Right.
And so there is a mechanism to talk to them and receive compliance. But I'm just trying to say, in other words, it doesn't sound like we have any instances where somebody's like closing a road or closing a sidewalk, that the city is not in some way involved in what they're doing, unless it's with city work, but then.
Yeah, or unless it's,
enforcing themselves.
or it's just when somebody just does it without asking. That happens all too often.
And so when somebody does it without asking, what does that look like? They're just, just like dropping off a
Well,
roll trailer?
it could be a couple, that has happened, a pod might, that company has actually been pretty good about coordinating because they know it's bad business to get that towed away. But, but in general, yeah, it could be something just, construction dumpster is actually fairly common popping
Okay,
up.
but if there's a construction dumpster, then that means there's a construction going on, and there's a permit associated with that.
There should be, yes.
In theory.
Yes.
Well, that's a different topic. Okay.
And that, yes, all of that, and I think all the shoulds and all too often kept coming up, and there's a lot of assumptions in this conversation, and there seems to be a lot of, like, trust building, which again, relationships and access, which I think is sort of what gives people pause, and so I would like to invite the city to find new ways to call people to their better angels, where they have to be responsible and accountable to it, and they're not allowed to get more permits with $100 if they continue to do things without permission or break the rules.
I really like the 3 times fine idea. It's not like the city is flush with cash. And I have a lot of great ideas of how we could use that money. So I think we should start 3 times fining people. If they don't do what they're supposed to do, I don't want to make it harder to do development. That's not what I'm saying. But I think making people follow the rules and charging them if they don't feels like holiday lights to me. I don't know.
Or
So-
and tiers for different types of violations. Like if you don't communicate with the business district, when you cut off their water, and 3 of those businesses use water to stay open, that's a problem. And you should have to pay money because those businesses lost money.
Yeah, and so one thing to watch on the fines, and in many places that works well to just what you spoke. North Carolina, as many people know, is its own odd character, right? And fines that are generated through anything that basically, whether it's in violation of an established ordinance or a general statute, go to our school systems. So it does not go to our general fund.
Great place to go. Love that. Still very much in favor.
I second.
I want to mention one other thing, that a strategy that was worked, and I don't know if this is legal in North Carolina, but a past job of mine, when there was a lack of compliance, doing closures and things like that, we had the relationship, I had a closure group, we had like 6 people. We would get our development folks to shut down the contractor, say, no work till you fix this. And that is costly. So I'm not saying that's what we need to do, because that's not really compatible with.
That's exactly where I was going. My point
Yeah.
is that in almost all of these situations, construction, whatever it is, the entity has a relationship with the city, and the city has the ability to red tag, and you're shut down until you resolve this, and you can't do that. So the city has more than just fines on the table. You can't get your CO. We're not gonna let you open. We're not gonna let you proceed.
We're
not
a stop
gonna,
work order.
you're gonna stop
We've
work order.
threatened in the past. I mean, usually it goes polite, impolite, threatening, stop work order. I don't think those are ideal tools, but that is what the city
Yeah,
has
well,
been
the-
doing.
And that's what we
So there's a
Okay,
carrot,
so
and there's a
it's
hammer,
Right.
Straight to the point.
yeah, so let me try to sum up. So if I understand it right, The city has not had a policy per se. It has had a de facto policy embedded in the application. The transportation is the department that governs this process, and transportation is updating the application itself and expanding on that, which is more or less working on the policy. You're going to continue to work on the policy, and that we may need to. We're going to ask council basically to consider that policy going forward, and making that both more transparent and more equitable going forward.
Did we confirm that it is a city council issue on sort of accountability?
So I want to break up the two things I feel like I'm hearing from you all, and one is very much like formalizing enforcement process, which would be a policy.
Yes.
Another that's been brought up is like how to improve communications among contractors. And like when Eagle Marketplace was being constructed and when the Flatiron was being constructed, city staff was involved, has been involved with monthly meetings, and we're like, hey, you really need to do this. One thing that could be done outside of city council, I think pretty quickly, is like this, you know, like one pager that provides guidance, particularly maybe there's thresholds if the project's gonna last a year or longer, if it impacts a block or more, you need to make contact with everybody, like, you know, have monthly meetings, make yourself available, provide this information. I think today, if you guys have ideas on the types of things that make sense, we can take that and run. I think enforcement-wise, I'm not sure exactly, I mean, I think like, this conversation is important and that we're hearing you, and if you want to formalize that in some form now or another day, like, that's also something that.
So the city already does this in a similar context. When we do development projects, we have to have a neighborhood meeting before we submit an application. We have to go on GIS and find all the properties within a certain distance, and it pulls up all their addresses, and we have to both email and physical mail, this is what's going on. So there's already
Tools are there.
yeah, it's already there, you know, and we're already requesting the development community to do those kind of things. So what Mark said earlier is that there's a team that kind of like gets it to that point, and then there's the actual guys, you know, with the big heavy trucks doing it. It's a different team, and he's talking about giving the same kind of tools and requirements to that team for communication on a day-to-day basis, which a good general contractor, a good superintendent does, but we're just wanting to ask that everybody does those kind of best practices. Okay. So do you guys have ideas on what that looks like? Those of you who are more retail and better at this than I am. Is that making sense? In other words, to what extent should we ask transportation DSD to communicate to applicants? If you're going to do this, you have to communicate. Obviously, any utility shutdowns. Obviously, any public right-of-way shutdowns. I would say for anything, for any purpose, for any time, you have to communicate with all affected parties.
And are we gonna suggest that they have a means of communication? Because I could tweet it, or I could put hang tags on doors, or I could.
I think so. The city requires us in the development community to make some kind of physical contact. Email's not. You have to mail them something, and I have to show proof of mail. There has to be a physical piece of information that goes out. Just tweeting it out, putting it on my Instagram, or whatever it is the kids use these days. I don't know these things. That's not enough.
Could we follow the city's ABI process?
What
Where
is
it's
that?
like with the subcontractors, you have a certain percentage of your work has to go to a certain group, and if it doesn't, you have to show how many people you reached out to, put their name and number, and prove that they said no, and that's why you're not using them.
Oh,
And so it's like, it could be like, you do have to send a snail mail and an email, and if you haven't heard from them, I want to see how you have to at least reach out to them 3 times in 3 different ways, and if they still didn't know,
well,
that's
so
not on that.
let me play devil's advocate just a second. So a guy comes up and they're like, hey man, we didn't know we had to do this, but I've got to shut off water tomorrow to make this connection. You know, are they gonna have time to do it? But you know, the superintendent can walk up and down the street and like knock on doors and talk to people, which is what I've seen good contractors do. And they're like, we're really sorry, but like from 6 to 8 tomorrow night, I'm gonna have to do a shutdown.
I mean,
Would that meet your, yeah, so I wanna be careful about like planned stuff and emergency stuff.
I guess I think that's the thing, like, that's a different thing. Like, if you didn't know, why didn't you know? Did you not know because you didn't do your due diligence? Or is
Could
it,
be
is it new
unforeseen condition, there's something broken we didn't know was broken. But then we've got staff that can determine that kind of stuff, whether it's actually emergency or they're just begging for permission after.
Right, that's what I think being, again, about the trust and holding everyone to account, I think being able to say like, hey, this is new information that no one knew and we're figuring out because now we're in the ground versus I didn't read the paperwork.
So the same thing can be said for this Carter Street stormwater thing,
Sure.
which affects all of downtown, and one day we had all of our staff 45 minutes late.
Right.
We had to open late.
Right.
That's an issue. So if we're gonna hold developers accountable, we need to hold city accountable. Same thing. And the
Yes.
communication rules have to apply across the board.
Absolutely.
I've got-
Acknowledgement might be the key, so I'm guilty of sending off a lot of emails, folks are getting information from so many different places in so many different ways, and reading an email is, difficult sometimes. And so I think that maybe acknowledgement is the piece of it, so I sent you an email, can you click here to say you received it? And then that way, folks, you can kind of track a little bit better, like, whether or not people actually receive it.
I would say that's the contractor's responsibility, or the entity's responsibility, like Mark was saying, like we call it closing the loop, and make sure that they receive the thing that we sent.
And then, like a read receipt on an email would tell you whether or not they read it. And then another suggestion is, Dana mentioned that on the Flatiron project, and this was a little bit before my time, but I caught the end of it, they utilized the Asheville Downtown Association to be a convener of those people, and the Asheville Downtown Association has a fantastic relationship with our businesses and property owners in downtown. And so I think that we probably have a better means of connection with folks, and not that it would be free, but I think that it might be a really great opportunity to collaborate with your local entities and help with a little bit of that community connection. Maybe they could engage with a local nonprofit to help with that.
And we had this conversation in like around the bid process yesterday. It's like, is there a PR team or a communications team doing this work? Like, I think part of it should be, are you committed to having someone focus on community relationships, outreach, and communications? And so even that can be part of the process. We require you to have a designated person to develop a comms plan, to execute the comms plan.
So what if, what if someone says, okay, I'll do all those things, and I want to close, the sidewalk along Haywood for the 3 days before and the 3 days after Thanksgiving, and they just want to do that.
Well, we had the
Okay, yes,
so we
that's
had
my
that,
point.
we
That's
had
my
that
point.
conversation at the Wall Street meeting, right? So, or not Wall Street, sorry, the Flatiron conversation. The Downtown Association was on it, Dana was on it, the contractors were on it, all the businesses were there, and the businesses said, listen, I believe it was Labor Day weekend, right? They wanted to shut it down for a number of weeks, maybe over Labor Day and then in October. And they were receptive to the conversation, saying, hey guys, those are one of our busiest weeks of the year. Can we make some adjustments? And it was kind of this like back and forth conversation. I felt like it was a really effective meeting because the developer listened, they made some recommendations, they offered some, opportunities for the businesses they would help them out with signage and things like that when it did happen. So it felt very effective, and I think it's because it was mediated by, a representative of the city, I wasn't very helpful. I was my first week on the job, but I think it was, pretty effective.
Well, because it seems to me that would be, so one of the things you said earlier, that obviously your first priority is safety of the general public, safety of the workers, and maintaining access, fire department access, ingress, egress, regress, yes. But there's access is a bigger term, and there's access to, signage, there's access to branding, there's access to, I'm walking along and there's a shop there, I didn't know it was there, but I didn't know there's a shop there because it's covered up with scaffolding and such. So if they do that, then it seems like if they're going to take away your branding and your street presence, which these people are paying for, then they have to replace it with something else. That should be part of the conversation. And I don't know how we mediate that. And we're just talking, and we're not necessarily yelling at you guys. Make that sure. I'm sorry. Anyway, it sounds like we need to talk about this in greater detail. So I think we need to do this. So I very much appreciate that information. That was perfect. What I'd like to do is ask some of the folks on here that actually have been talking to form a working group. I need at least 4 that will meet and talk about this, and then interface with these 2 gentlemen as they work on it, just so that we know what their procedures are going to be. I don't want to call it policies yet, if the council actually has to set policy. But they're working on the procedures. You hush. Could I? Is that okay? Does that sound reasonable? I mean, nobody has anything else to do, right? Jefferson, you mind being on that? Megan, that seems like you're leaning to, maybe? Not really? Hayden definitely. Yeah, I was going to do Jefferson, Hayden, and definitely you, maybe English.
I'm on a lot of groups right
You're on a
now.
lot of groups right now.
Let's get this bid squared away. I'm happy to do it. I just wanted to make sure people that were.
I need at least 3. I think I need at least 3 for a working group to get something.
A working group can be informal,
Yeah,
so
okay,
whatever works.
okay, all right. Well, Jefferson and Hayden for sure. If anybody else wants to
I see your pitch. Can I please have somebody else?
yeah. Does anybody else very passionate about this? Robin says no.
If nobody's passionate about it, we don't have to do it. I think, just like, do the best you can and come to us when you have thoughts or questions, and we're happy to report on it. But if it's not something that is impacting, don't.
Well, it just seems like it's a multifaceted piece. Yes, sir.
I'll just identify that we, like I said, we did a real quick kind of brainstorming session.
Thank you.
And we'll continue to refine that, right? We'll continue to identify what that level of communication looks like. And maybe that's the opportunity to kind of bring it back to maybe just the working group, and you guys can kind of evaluate that and see to the bigger group. So as you're deciding that, just know that we're going to continue on our side to kind of draft that up and not finalize it, but draft it up just to get some feedback and expand it from there.
And if you have questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
I'm having you tapped in via email.
Yeah.
So like the communication guidance specifically feels like a really achievable thing. And like, yeah, either a couple of you get together and sit down with us and we can just hash it out, or it sounds like maybe we take a stab and then get
Yeah,
that. small
let's
group
do that.
feedback.
Let's let them keep, they've been working on it. This isn't something that they hadn't thought about, so let's let them keep working on it. Report back to us on kind of where they are on it. We'll address the communication part. And then I do think that we need to have input on the policy piece of it. Because I think there's something out there that in order for them to do any kind of enforcement, there's going to have to be a policy behind that, and that's going to be a council, and we would be part of making that recommendation. Okay, very good. Any further questions for Mark? Yes, Stu?
I have a question about unfinished projects that seem to have stalled out, and specifically down on Cox Avenue. There's a big project that was started, giant, hideous parking garage was built, just recently opened up, I guess, but there's just a big, huge mess down there. Part of the sidewalk is closed off, trees were pulled out and never replaced, and I just wonder who's responsible for that, and how long that neighborhood and how long the city has to put up with that mess before somebody is tasked with turning it into something beautiful or useful. Like, what happens when a project just dies?
I don't have an answer for that. I will say that one frustrates me too, because we followed up with with different folks, with the folks that have been involved on the development side, dealing with that development entity that's trying to parse up things and say, can we get this open? But we really have no means to do that. I mean, and I think there is a means to actually, for the city to reconstruct everything and charge them, but the resources to do that, I don't think are there. So, I mean, I wish I had an answer for that one specifically. That one is very frustrating. Yes.
And you did bring up a good point, specifically to like that sidewalk closure, right? They basically have a fence there, and we've worked through what that looks like. You know, literally, can we move that onto their property and allow that sidewalk to exist? So we're working on that piece of it for sure. And that's a good kind of obvious piece that really should be taken care of. So we are trying to get that piece finalized. But yeah, for a big project like that, and just to just stall as it has, thankfully it doesn't occur often, because it is super complicated to get momentum back on something like that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Very good.
Thank you all.
That was fun, John. Let's do that again.
I do have one semi-related question, maybe more for like the commission and the city. Do we have like a stance on like doing some sort of open street program for downtown? Like maybe during the summer, it's for a day, certain streets are closed to cars and it's just pedestrians, and restaurants have tables and dining out in the street. Say that again? Yeah. Other cities do this with great success, and I mean, every time I'm downtown, and
The city loses money on 300,000 people walking around the streets in the weekend.
We did do that
Mhm.
for a number of years. It's called Belshare, and it was successful for some people and not for others. And folks got tired. So I don't know that this commission has a stance.
Isn't that happening? Isn't like two people? Is that going through city council right now? Because at the city council, people running for the forum that ADA had this week, somebody mentioned creating a no-car zone. So
I don't think Billy's talking about a festival. He's just talking about pedestrian access. He's not talking about selling beer on the streets. Right? You're just talking about.
well, I'm thinking more of like during the summer, every Saturday, during a certain period of time, certain streets would be closed down and people could walk around.
Closed down to cars.
Right.
But not booths selling
No.
merch and beer.
So the city,
Still be a pedestrian street. You can bring that back up to it.
the city doesn't do programming of that nature. We do permit that type of programming if that request comes to us. The city tried a number of things during COVID and, not closing to traffic completely, but trying to prioritize the pedestrian. Programming is a really important aspect of that. And again, I don't think that the city at this time isn't driving what that looks like. But staff is always open to working with community members to explore options.
So that would be, in other words, the city wouldn't do it, but there would be an entity that would do it, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a festival per se, but it could be something else. But that entity would then have to come up with a plan. We're going to shut these streets down at this.
I want the city to do it. I want the city to do it.
And then that would be submitted to transportation and then go from there. But that sounds like, I don't know who would champion such a.
I mean, I guess just to clarify, like my perspective is like, during peak tourist season, I'm on a 5-foot wide sidewalk with dozens and dozens of other people, and we're crammed on the sidewalk, and it's like, we could be walking in the street and having a good time and all have our own space. That's just my vision.
During COVID, Wall Street was closed off
Yeah.
to cars. I think-
And there was a push for Wall Street to become a permanent pedestrian street, and that is kind of like the concept of the project.
This could be something you all talk about at your retreat, because right now it's not a council priority. If this is a priority for the commission, I recommend you put it on the list for the retreat.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, that's it for new business and presentations, as best I know. We'll move on to updates and reports, and we can kind of hit that again when we talk about the retreat topic. So updates and reports, Ricardo, design review.
We reviewed 2 projects this month. One was Riverside Drive Residences, which is it's coming back. This was approved in 2021, I think, and it was going to be a mixed-use development. It's coming. It is a level 3 conditional zoning amendment, and the new project, instead of being this large multi-use development, is going to be, or they're proposing an even larger residential development, which would be, good. 7 stories, 240 dwelling units. The conditional zoning they're looking for is they already had approval to add 1 story above the guidelines, and this would be adding 2 stories, but they did reduce the overall height, not the overall height of the building, but the height of each story, so that the full impact would be a little bit mitigated. And the other condition is the overall length of the building. This was overall, the design review committee felt that there were a couple of issues with the way that the project was approaching some of the guidelines, and so this was an informal review, so they have a chance to address those issues and come back. The other one is the 72 Rankin Street, the new substation, which is going to be, what they're proposing now is a lot less terrible, and in fact a lot smaller, and in fact a lot smaller than what it is now. And the plan is for, they're going to set up a temporary substation in Patton Avenue, and then refurbish the one on Rankin. And then once that's complete, they will go back, remove the temporary, and actually set up the permanent substation on Patton Avenue. And overall, the design is a lot less impactful, and the design review committee made some recommendations that will make it even less so. And that's about it.
It's very measured, very good to the first one. Very measured. Yeah, any questions on that? So, obviously, we had a ton of discussion about the substation the first go around.
Yeah, I'm curious how that impacts plans to Thomas Wolfe
Well,
Auditorium.
it's part of that. So what they're proposing to do is, the current location of the substation is kind of like off of Hiwassee right there. And so there's a swap where the city owns that little corner piece at Hiwassee. Duke's basically going to move over to the corner, which then frees up that little piece behind Thomas Wolfe that would allow the city to do some of their proposed things for the back of house for Thomas Wolfe. So it helps Duke. It keeps it in a area that's not really developable for other things, kind of like they're on the back of the Civic Center. It's where the major transmission lines are already coming in. So, basically, and our kind of response was they had like a 10-foot fake brick wall along the sidewalk, and we were like, just open it up and do nice fencing, and that's better with a lower wall.
I think the overall cost to Duke for what they're proposing now is a lot less than what was being proposed before, because they don't have the big retaining wall that we're talking about, and it's also going to be even less so after our recommendations, because they were coming in with, like Brian said, this fake brick wall and all this, and we're just like, look, just keep it simple, keep it light, but yeah, the footprint will actually pull back, so the back end of the substation will be opened up to the Thomas Wolfe.
So, any other questions on those?
I don't know how appropriate it is for us to ask these questions, but I'm wondering, like, for buildings like this that are really, like, incredibly long, if the design review committee or the city's ever considered having like demise line regulations, so like after 250, 300 feet, you have to change the facade.
Two things, that's not in downtown. And two, we do. Both River Arts and downtown has that in the design guidelines. And the River Arts District requires that every 200 feet that there's a break in the building, more or less. And that's one of the things that we had deep discussions about.
Gotcha, thanks.
The previous design addressed that issue.
The previous design, overall, I think the project was better, it looked better, but this is one of those, one of those circumstances where if you can't get what you want, at least you get what you need. And getting some affordable housing is always a good thing, so. But yeah,
If it's affordable.
That's what they were saying, right? That's what they were saying, but we'll see.
All right, Robin, homeless update.
There's a link to the report, so I'm not gonna go over everything, but the major thing is that the fiscal year 2023 Continuum of Care competition results were awarded, and Asheville's projects were awarded over $2 million. We requested 10 different projects, only 2 were not funded, so. And also the Continuum of Care transition launch is happening this month. I know people are asking a lot about how that's going to be put together. February 29th is the first official meeting, and they're going to finalize the charter at that meeting. And then the board's going to be elected at a meeting that is TBD in March. So if you're interested in keeping up with that, that's going to be some information there.
Any questions? Very good. Hayden, ADA?
We are hosting the State of Downtown event on March 19th, and we'll hear the results of the annual Downtown Stakeholder Survey. Happy to share those with this group as well, if that's desired. We'll also hear from the mayor and County Commission Chair Brownie Newman. We also have a keynote speaker this year, Jaron Price, who's the president and CEO of the Downtown DC Business Improvement District, and they're doing some really fantastic things with their bid. So hoping that can give some great ideas for if we do implement a bid, really how to take advantage of that to help all of our stakeholders. Let's see, I think that's all.
Dana, do you want to, or do you just walk through it? It's pretty good. Go ahead.
All right, good morning, everyone. Downtown safety and cleanliness. I'm just going to continue to include this link on this report. Others can, obviously in the public, can access these reports as well, but we are continuing to send out a monthly newsletter that highlights some of the latest things the city is doing to address these issues, but kind of broader, like hot topics within downtown as well. And we're continuing with every other month. Assistant City Manager Ben Woody and a representative from APD will continue to address this body with updates. So we'll be due for that next month. City parking garage and lot security. So about a month and a half ago, staff brought a contract to City Council. We have launched 24/7 security in the city's parking lots and parking decks. So that work kicked off in February. Staff has also installed new security cameras at the Harris Cherokee Center garage and is working on installing those in the other city garages. Budget process and survey. So Ben Woody talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, but the survey closes at the end of day today. So if you haven't taken the budget priorities survey, please take that survey. The results will be presented to City Council at their budget work session on March 12th. Panhandling regulation information. So the way the city regulates panhandling was clarified. That protocol, those policies were clarified several months ago, and now the city's working on getting that information out. And so I provided just a few resources here on how to find that information. Our city attorney did an interview on a radio show recently, and there's printed brochures that staff is getting in the hands of fire department, community responders, APD, in the brochure rack at ADA, and the information's available at community centers. So just want to keep you all informed of that communications process or effort. Pack Square Plaza Vision Plan, I do intend to just keep this one as a running item on the agenda. We are working on the Mellon Foundation funded projects, the one that kind of has some key action going on is the Boosting the Block project. So staff's going to City Council on Tuesday to ask for authorization to execute a contract with a community facilitator team who will work through the life of this Boosting the Block project with the community on the block and the larger community to implement placemaking, storytelling, cultural corridor, gateway enhancements. So please stay tuned on that. 24/7 public restroom. So a standalone unit was approved. The specific contracts in order to move forward, that was approved at a recent council meeting. Staff is also looking at opening the 29 Haywood restroom. I don't know what that will look like exactly, but city is moving forward with that restroom facility, has a plan for maintenance, recognizes that it's going to be a learning process as we go. If more resources are needed for maintenance, prepared to be able to respond to that. So I don't have an installation date, but looking at probably this summer. Carter Ann Patton Stormwater Project. So there's been a pause in construction for what seems like quite some time now, maybe 2 to 3 months. There were some utility conflicts that were unexpected, and so the contractor has kind of been working on updating the plan and updating some design aspects, and that's just in its final stages with city staff right now. Once we know what that construction will look like, we will be sure. I will try to encourage and great communications. And there will be further impacts, so they still have to cross Patton at some point, and so just, it is coming, and we will communicate that when we have more information. Mike Lamb, former deputy police chief, was appointed officially as police chief, so I wanted you all to be aware of that announcement.
I was actually planning to, in this meeting, do a letter of recommendation to Deborah, but then she just did it.
And APD is working with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office currently. They kicked off its second week in February to do weekend evening patrols. So I'm sure when we have an APD representative at the next meeting, they can provide more information on how that's going.
How long is that?
As I understand, I couldn't find this officially written down, but I believe through June 30th.
I think June 26th.
So we already have representation and involvement in the Carter, or in the Patton Avenue corridor feasibility study, but I just kept this in here from a previous update just about the goals of that work and a link to the project page if anyone wants to find more information.
Obviously, the bids came in well over budget. We don't know how much over budget because they've never told us what the budget is, but they just said it was well over budget. And so they're basically, I think DOT's language is they're asking for their best and final offer from the design teams, and then so we still don't know what even the proposed designs were because those have not been revealed. When something like that is that far over budget, they don't show all their cards yet. They kind of go back and play another hand, as it were.
And to some extent, the work that's happening to look at the Patton corridor can continue.
Yes.
Of course, it will have to relate. City council meetings, so want to make sure you guys are aware that City Council is having their annual retreat. It was yesterday and it's all day today, so when you leave this meeting, put it on in your background today. They're working through their goals for the year. It's really important. What they discuss here through their, strategic priorities and their goals, it absolutely translates into where staff is focused for the year ahead. And that's what I've got, but happy to answer any questions.
I guess as we get into our future agenda items, when we talk to APD next, I needed to make a note to talk about some of the recent news reports talking about how the shifting resources to downtown has shifted resources, are limited, very limited resources away from the areas where we actually have the most crime. And I wanted to, I just want that to be part of the discussion. Even though not all those areas are in downtown, I would include Hillcrest in downtown myself. And that's actually one of the things we've been talking about even in the Patton Avenue corridor is that, the way we've shunted those people in that entire neighborhood and created a little island over there is criminal, and reconnecting is a big deal. And anyway, just wanted to make that note as we went. So retreat planning coming up. We cannot do the April 8th date. So we're going to have to, I saw that. So we're going to have to do resend a doodle to do another one. The plan is to try to do a food tour. And then I think we're going to have a little program and then do the food tour.
Food tour? Tell me more about that.
If I knew about it, I would tell you. I just don't know. It just sounds fun.
Inspired by one of our new members who does food tours, but we were thinking kind of an abbreviated social, that would be a fun thing for everybody to do, but get some business done first, so probably starting kind of in the afternoon, maybe not a full lunch since we would be spending money on the food tour, but, go through some business and then 3 to 5 do a tour. So April, I think April dates seem a little bit, I don't know if, I'll just do a doodle. I was hoping we could, but I don't think we can.
We can all look at our calendars now if you'd like to.
Love that.
You would love that, so that you don't have to do a doodle.
So how's April 22nd? Even Michelle, are you gone that date? I can't remember.
I think I'm back. I'm back.
I can do that.
20 what?
22nd?
Birthday.
And the reason I'm looking at a Monday, oh, that's nice, is because it seemed like that might work well on the food tour front. Stu, I know that there was already some ticket sales, so please help us with dates. I mean, the 23rd or 24th, I don't know if, we do have a downtown commission meeting on the 26th. We could cancel the regular meeting potentially that week.
I'll be gone.
Okay, you'll be gone at home.
25th or 28th.
Well, what about the 22nd?
That's good.
Does anybody,
22nd?
can anybody not do the 22nd?
It's also Passover.
It is Passover. We won't go after dark. Stu, could we make that work, you think, on the
22nd? Yeah, 22nd works.
Okay.
Let's set it for the
Cancel it.
22nd.
I'm gonna update the calendar invite and put it on hold.
Okay. So that's, so if you've got other, it sounds like we've already got some topics that we want to talk about at the retreat. The main thing so for my purposes, one of the things I would like to do at the retreat is make sure I understand what y'all's priorities are, so that we're getting the right folks, and having the right things on the agenda, for the year. Now, it doesn't mean we don't respond to things as they come up. I just kind of, if I have something ahead of time, it helps us reach out and plan. I already talked about, so safety update at the March meeting. I don't know that we can expect Chief Lamb to attend all such things, but I am interested in some of the data stuff that I've been seeing recently and how that translates. And obviously, city is making use of limited resources, so just want to have that discussion. And then we reached out to I don't know if all of you got a chance to go to some of the stakeholder meetings that they had for the bid. But I found that very informative and useful myself on the one that I was able to go to. My understanding is that still trying to move forward to get a proposal to council, this summer, which means they're planning on coming back to talk to us at the March meeting. Anybody have any other, those of you more in the know than I am, which would be anybody, want to or need to talk about that, or?
About the bid? The bid seems really cheap to me, like, what did they said it was $1.5 million a year or something like
And
that?
it's just been lowered.
What's that?
And it's just been lowered.
It's just been lowered. That's like the fraction of the cost of a Super Bowl ad, right? Like, how come we can't pay for this dang thing ourselves? Like, I know I'm super late to this conversation about the bid, but when they told me the price, I was like, that seems so cheap. Why are we having to do anything but just like make a budget for it? I don't know.
I think the idea of the property owners being assessed like a rate on their property tax is that they would have a little bit more control of the direction of the bid. So right now, the city has a lot of, items in their budget that they need to be working on, but the business improvement district would be a little bit more hyper-focused on a certain district,
Sure.
and that the property owners would have a little bit more say.
Well, I understand how the bid works, yeah. But, so many of the property owners downtown don't live in Asheville. Some of them don't even live in North Carolina. So I understand that I read a lot about the bids and how they work and stuff, but when they did the proposal and they told us the price, I was shocked by how low it was. And I just didn't understand why the city can't come up with 1.5 mil on its own. Like, I get it. I know that the businesses want to control that money. They don't want to give it to city council to control. And I know that city council does want to control that money, and that's why the bid didn't go through last time. So I know that there's an impasse there. And that's it. So
That's the reason.
the bid is strictly.
That was a really good
strictly
update,
So that
Steve.
the business owners can control the money. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. Now I get it.
For
There's
the
a lot of,
benefit of
I'm watching all the thought bubbles here. It's coming
Or,
from-
I shouldn't say business owners, I should say property owners. Yes.
Yeah.
So many of whom do not live in Asheville. Right.
Do we have
Well,
like
so-
numbers on that?
Do what now?
Like numbers on like where people live or own
You
property?
can look up by parcel on the tax records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, you're gonna get an LLC, and you don't necessarily know, then you have to go to Secretary of State, and
Yeah.
anyway.
It's a fun running it by.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, so at our March meeting, we'll have some stuff it'll be an item on the agenda. My hope is that at that point, we would have the proposed charter, I guess, for the bid.
The next steering committee meeting, Kim just sent it out yesterday, is March 7th.
Okay.
And that is to, I think, solidify those items.
It would be basically the makeup of the, is it this, what do you call that?
The board.
The board, the makeup of the board.
Proposed.
That's right.
makeup of the board.
I've seen that.
Well, I think names, have
The-
the names been proposed? No.
I don't think
No.
they'll be proposed.
So, go ahead.
That's a clarifying question. We're trying to figure out what we want the conversation on.
Yes, I want to make sure that I'm asking for the right people there from the bid, and then if we need any city staff to respond to anything, that I've got what you need to talk. I got people in the room that you want in the room to talk about this so that you can make an informed decision.
I would like them to present sort of what changes happened since we started having public meetings. Like, let's look at the original proposal and the original Puma study that created the proposal, and then with all this community feedback, I'd like them to list out what the feedback was and what they're doing, what changes they've made to address community concern.
Okay, but that would then be from we could do that with just the local folks. I don't think we would need the homeless, such a weird, but I don't think we would need those folks.
No, just
Um, Okay, all right. And then would there be any city staff, other than just reports that you, go ahead?
We'll have Ben Woody at the meeting, and so he would be an appropriate resource, I think, for questions directed to the city.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? So here's the, I might have said this before, I apologize. I think that we should make a recommendation either for or against this, so that council has the downtown commission's input. So I want you to have, in other words, we're gonna call for a vote, and I don't want you to say, oh, I can't vote, I don't have enough information. If there's information that you need, I'd like to know what it is, so that you can make an informed decision. Does that make sense? Okay.
When are we presenting the recommendation to council?
That I don't know. So if they want to go to council in the summer, I don't think we would have
I
to
think
make.
they're going to council in April.
Are they going to council in April?
Yeah. I think it's the second weekend, I think it's the second council meeting in April.
Second council meeting.
The city
So we-
hasn't like
so we have to-
aligned on a schedule yet
Right.
with them, just.
Yeah.
They have to
I
vote
think that's the
twice on it
intention.
though, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, we've laid out what the last possible dates are for them. I know that we are waiting for them to tell us what that schedule looks like.
So when would council?
So
I
last
need-
possible date, there has to be multiple readings. I mean, the last possible date is the
I
council.
thought I had
can
until
approve it
April
is
to make
later
the
in June.
motion.
But they're,
You don't.
I could be wrong, that was the ideal timeline, but I know there's a lot that goes into it, and I mean, it has to be approved by June 30, so if you anticipate it's gonna take 2 council meetings to get it done.
Right, so either way, we should be prepared to make a recommendation.
We need to be
by
prepared.
April in case they get their best case scenario.
Let me talk to, let me find out from, Sage is not here because she's at the retreat. I need to find out like what council kind of would like from us.
Sure.
If they want that before it's submitted in April, or if we put our 2 cents in the middle of the process.
Sure.
And it'd be hard for us to make a motion without a full proposal from.
Yeah, I don't see how we do that. I can't make a proposal if I don't know,
Right.
I can't make a motion
Facts.
unless I've seen what the thing is.
Would it be better for us to, if council has to vote on it twice, would it be better for us to wait until something is proposed to council, that way it is like it's on the record,
This is it. This is it. It's not like I'm not voting on the cookie dough, I'm voting on the actual cookie. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I want to know what the thing is. So I think that's right. I think that's
So
right.
we should wait, let them present something to council, which is the ball rolling, and then that's what forces our action.
It seems like this would be a really good use for a working group, in my opinion. I'm just saying, like, we did one at the Downtown Association to make sure that we could flesh everything out, but like, there is so much that goes into this. If you have a group of people who have a lot of questions, I don't have a lot of questions. I feel real good about it. But there are people who probably do, and it seems like if you guys could get together with the proponents of this, so they can walk you through it, you would feel a little bit more confident in your vote.
But I think it needs to be a whole commission, not just.
Well, I mean, like, the working group would come back and report, and you all tell them what your questions are, and they come back and tell you what they found out.
Or a more significant portion of the March meeting, where like maybe if we can get the report before the meeting, everybody can come prepared with their questions, we can just hash this out, and everybody can leave that meeting feeling like they have the answer, and then we'll bring back.
That's where I'm leaning right now, Hayden. If we're getting closer to the March meeting and I feel like things are way up in the air and I don't have the information. So right now I feel like I have a lot. I mean, I was the guy asked, are you a green, red, yellow? And I was a yellow because I still have questions on like what is the baseline and what is the standard, and then what are the standards is the board going to be held to, open meetings, so on and so forth. How do you, if it breaks, how do you fix it? But I think those things are getting addressed in some of what I've heard that's coming. So I think I'm going to have my questions answered at the March meeting. Again, my point is that if you already know you're going to have questions,
So
make sure that I've got those so that I think either the proponents of the bid can answer them at that meeting, or we can have city staff that answer them at that meeting. Does that make sense? Okay. This was a good meeting. I'm a little late, but not too bad. Any final comments or questions, stuff coming up? Yes.
Just as a potential future agenda item, last year, at the end of the year, we talked about a kind of a comparative report on hotels that had come into the pipeline since the moratorium ended and how they stack up on the community benefits table.
That's right.
I would be interested in still seeing that information. I realize it will take some time to get together.
Didn't we have in the that there was like a review period, and aren't we close to that?
We've been providing updates to council annually. I don't have a date for when that's cohesively ready to present, but I will let our department folks know about the April 22nd retreat date, because that could be a topic of focus, and or if it's another date. Thanks for continuing to bring it to our attention, and we'll see if we can kind of get that scheduled.
I think the community benefits table needs to be rejiggered, because there's things on there that nobody's even looking at.
No one has paid yet
Okay.
into it, so we don't really have any data points on actual payments. All we have is narratives about what they were going to do.
What they were willing to do.
Holy
And
cow.
That's a procedural kind of glitch in the ordinance.
Yeah, I just didn't, yeah.
When does the ordinance say they have to pay after completion?
It does not.
I thought it was part of the condition of CO even.
Well, that's just standard statutory compliance, that you have to be in compliance with all ordinances by the time you get a certificate of occupancy, but I don't believe there's any text that says you have to pay by this milestone.
I'd like for us to talk about
But I can
efficacy.
look that up in 2 seconds.
I'd like for us to talk about efficacy at the retreat and like,
Of
it's
of us as a whole?
like, just like, we talk a lot about policy, and every time we review policy, it seems like the whole point is that no one can enforce the policy. That's what I'm talking about. And so the policy doesn't sound that effective. So I would like to talk about.
Are you talking about efficacy of the city of Asheville, efficacy of specific policies, or efficacy of us?
Efficacy of us being like an oversight body for policies that don't feel that effective. And I feel like even today, the conversation we were having, I don't want to yell at the people doing the job, but it's like, I don't know the point of a conversation for a policy that no one can enforce. And so I'd like to know what my job is here when I'm telling this man that I don't know why he's doing this thing.
Tal is waving at us from somewhere. Okay. Yeah, all right, yeah, no, that's a good point. We'll I don't know who to address that with.
Which is like just guide me, so I don't want to be upset at the wrong person. I want to be upset at home if I need to be. So it's like, just tell me, like, no, we're aware that things are not effective, and the best way we can be effective is to accept that and talk about other things.
You are an advisory body to council. You aren't an oversight body.
Right.
And this type of concern, there's been a whole look at our boards and commissions over the last 2 years. There was a report to council a couple months ago. I mean, this is it's an important concern, and it's not a unique concern.
Right.
Which doesn't mean there aren't better ways to do things or things that we can do, but the role of this and other bodies,
Well, that's sort of the thing. It's like, if that we are advising, so it feels like sometimes we have oversight conversations that we should not be having because that's not our job. And so maybe the reports that were being presented should shift so they don't invite oversight conversations. They should invite only discussions that advise at a certain stage when feedback is useful, right?
Thank you. That's good. Okay. Do we have an emotion to adjourn? All in favor? Close your laptops and let's go.